Navy Pier is in your ward.
Yes.
I heard talk at one time about getting a bigger Ferris wheel that was a big money generator, just like it is in London. Is that ever going to happen?
I think they put that idea back on the shelf. I don't think we're getting the bigger wheel now. Navy Pier just finished a professional study, a planning study on where we want to see the pier 10 years from now. And so they're going through some very exciting programmatic changes. They're actually talking about potentially adding a 100-room boutique hotel at the end of the pier to make it more of a year-round destination. They're looking at bringing in larger institutions to fill up the space in the pier so it's more meaningful for families that visit. But the real challenge for the pier is to make it truly a year-round destination, and that hasn't been the case. It sees incredible visitorship for 4 or 5 months of the year. The question is, how do we keep it full in the winter months? And so, obviously, a larger Ferris wheel doesn't accomplish that goal, but there are some exciting plans out there.
Right, right. I'm curious about, from your perspective, when all of these events are planned, Lollapalooza and the Streeterville Festival, and those different, do the organizers come to you? Because it just strikes to me that when they do these things, it taxes our infrastructure in a way that undermines maybe some of your ideas about how we should be running the community.
Sure.
How does that work? Do they have to come to you at City Hall, or they have to make proposals to you through a committee?
It's a delicate balance. Everyone wants to have special events downtown. That's where the people are and where the beautiful architecture is. But it has an infrastructure impact. And it has an impact on public resources. Police officers are needed to monitor those sites. Fire personnel need to be available to respond to an emergency. So there is a cost that comes with it. Special event fees in general are incredibly low. You can monopolize 8 or 9 blocks downtown for a $50 permit. Little known fact.
Well, what are you going to do about that?
Well, I spend a lot of time saying no. When it comes to special events downtown, I'm Dr. No.
Okay.
You probably see 1 in every 12 pitches actually implemented downtown. We screen out a whole lot of stuff, and because we're concerned about impact.
Right.
What we look at is, do these festivals or special events generate a public benefit? Are they supporting a worthwhile charity? Is there going to be a return for that expense, for that taxing of resource? And we do our best to vet those. Sometimes we get it wrong. We had a situation where we had a large art fair that literally took up 10 square blocks in River North and would shut the neighborhood down for about 5 days. They were paying $50 to do that. And the organizers were walking back to the suburbs literally with $600,000–700,000 in profit in their pocket. The city had nothing to show for that. Our police officers, 10 of them assigned to that event, were not compensated properly. You're going to see reform in that regard. Much higher fees, and we're going to be charging per linear foot. If you want to use the right-of-way and the sidewalk and the street, you're going to have to pay for it. So that should, I think, force more of these events into parks and out of traffic and away from densely populated areas.
Yeah. Are you gonna? Do you have to do that by ordinance or something, or
yes.
Can you?
That'll be a component of the city budget. When I mentioned earlier that we're going to be rebalancing certain city fees, that's one of them because there's
that's
absolutely
just shocking
cost.
to me that for $50 they can make it so inconvenient for the citizens in that 10-block area, and then they walk away. They capture all the benefit, and we get all the detriment.
And we pay for the police resources that are there to secure it. So that all has to change. It's been something I've been talking about for close to 3 years. We now have a very receptive budget office that's looking for every possible opportunity to find some revenue. So this, I think, will definitely be on the table.
Yeah. On a totally different note, but there's been talk of late, and I'm not sure where it's even coming from, but we need fewer aldermen. What's your take on that?
Well, when Mayor Emanuel floated that, I think towards the end of the campaign, I was the first person to stand up and say, yes, we can.
Yeah, okay.
I represent a ward that is literally double-sized.
Well, tell us about that. Why is that?
Well, where the rest of the city saw a decline in population, we saw explosive growth downtown. Each ward is supposed to be about 55,000 people strong. And because of all the growth we've had downtown the last 10 years, my ward that I represent is closer to 100,000 people. So we've been representing a double-sized ward. We receive about 2,000 individual residential complaints a month. In addition to that, another 1,800 or so requests from businesses. So it's incredible volume. It's an incredible amount of work, but it can be done. And it would realize a savings for the taxpayer. Just remember, you need to provide those 25 aldermen with the staff resources they need to take care of 100,000 people, because it's an incredible volume day to day.
Yeah. And all the campus for Grant Park and all the museums, you'll recall the big controversy of Mayor Daley closing down Miggs and
sure.
all of that.
Yeah.
You know, and now that we're so many years later, what are we, 5, 6 years later? What do you have to say about it? Right decision?
You know, a lot of folks were upset about the lack of process. You know, the midnight
Sure.
the midnight bulldozer run.
Well, that was his way.
That's true. You know, I think the end product. I think a lot of folks appreciate that open space. It hasn't even really been fully developed and landscaped, but it's a passive use on public open space on the lakefront, and a lot of people appreciate it. Maybe more exceptions are taken with how we got there.
Right, right, okay.
Yeah.
And again, different subject, but I know obviously all this talk about casino gambling and everything, and I don't want to put you in an awkward spot, but to the extent that you can talk about casino gambling in Chicago, you know, where do you come out on this, or what are the issues that you feel as an alderman you're dealing with, the pros and the cons and the gives and the takes?
You know, as I'm looking at the casino issue generally, I'm not too sure the governor is going to sign this legislation.
Right.
Generally, I'm okay with a casino license coming to the city of Chicago. Obviously with some caveats.
Yeah, people go 20 minutes to Gary, right? So I mean,
go count the license plates in the parking lot. One of my colleagues in the city council actually did this once. Went to Indiana and counted the license plates in the parking lot from Illinois, and it was something like 80% by his count. So we are literally watching millions of dollars drive across the bridge. So I do think the city needs a casino license. Obviously, where we locate that casino is going to be a very sensitive issue. Is the city going to get its fair share of revenue from that added burden? We talk about infrastructure and public safety resources. Those are associated with casino gambling too. So let's make sure it's a fair deal for Chicago taxpayers. But I think it could provide a needed boost and make city of Chicago more competitive with other convention cities. And hang on to a lot of revenue we're seeing go across the border.
Yeah. You know, this past spring and early summer, we had in your ward all of this gang activity and the closure of North Avenue Beach, Oak Street Beach, that area. And I saw that you were right there with the police superintendent taking some strong action. Could you tell us how are we doing now?
Sure.
Can I walk safely down Chicago and not worry about getting beaten up?
You can.
Okay.
We had a bumpy start to the summer season, and people forget, but we do have issues in the very early months of the summer almost every year. But this past year they were pronounced, and we had a number of very disturbing incidents involving large groups of teenagers terrorizing mostly older citizens and robbing them. And that is absolutely unacceptable downtown. It should be unacceptable in any neighborhood,
right,
but certainly one that is the magnet for our tourism economy and our hospitality industry. I have 100,000 residents I care deeply about and want to have safe in their homes. But let's also talk about the tourists that come here and our international visitors. This isn't the kind of thing people want to have in the middle of a tourism district. And we don't want people going back to Germany or Japan or China telling them about how fearful they were downtown. So we were very aggressive. I commend Superintendent McCarthy for getting right on this, and the local police commander was fantastic. We secured more resources to heighten visibility of officers on these corridors where we were having problems. We put a lot more undercover cops onto the L system, where a lot of the folks, this was basically the escape valve for these vagrants, and it's had an impact. You'll see walking down these corridors a number of uniformed officers. You won't see the groups of folks just hanging out. It's I think, a pronounced difference downtown. But it's incredibly important. We can't allow there to be a perception that downtown is unsafe, because this is the draw to the city of Chicago for most of our visitors.
Yeah. Well, Wednesday night, Saturday night fireworks, right?
Yeah.
That's a draw.
Yeah, it sure is.
Well, it wakes me up at night.
You got a great view of it, I'm sure, though.
Yeah, I love my city, We all do. Speaking of the look of the city, I recently read that we're switching over all the lights so that I travel a fair amount. When you fly into Chicago, it's got this orange kind of glow to it. We're getting rid of that.
Yep.
Why are we doing that?
Well, and a lot of the changes we're making are actually to install more energy efficient devices that are cheaper to maintain and to power. But that's really it. You need to make forward-looking investments now to save money over the long run. LED lighting is one of those initiatives that's going to have a big impact, I think, on our bottom line.
I think another one has a big impact that's more your ward than maybe most others is the parking, those parking deals that we pay. And why couldn't I pay an annual fee and then I get to park anywhere I want, within the zones?
I think it's worth looking at.
Well, how about looking at it?
I think we will.
I think it's been proposed.
We're taking suggestions from anyone who has them, and parking policy is certainly an area we could make some dramatic improvements. The parking meter lease, widely unpopular. One of the benefits it produced downtown is that you actually now have turnover of parking stalls. You can actually find a metered parking space on the street. Now the greatest complaint is that you have to plug it every 2 hours. People are happy to pay for 3 or 4 hours of parking to see a show, grab some dinner. That's something we'll be addressing this fall as well.
Yeah, good. Want you to address civics in the classroom this fall. We've talked a little bit about extending the school day and the school year, but we're not teaching civics in our classrooms, and people aren't going to know that. How do you go about getting elected as an alderman, and what are our 3 branches of government, and it's appalling. So if you ever get an opportunity as alderman, please look into that.
I will. I promise.
Well, they're kind of giving me the hook over here, but before they do that, if you had the opportunity to speak to all of our viewers and say something on behalf of the city or the city council or your ward, what would you tell them? It's like, do you remember Johnny Carson?
Yeah,
You're
sure.
so young. Johnny Carson had Conrad Hilton on the program one time, and he said, Conrad Hilton, Mr. Hilton, if you had one thing that you could tell people, what would it be? And he thought about it for a moment. He said, the shower curtain goes inside the tub.
I don't have great useful information like that, though. I'd tell folks, although the newspaper headlines can be a bit depressing right now related to city government and the tough situation that we're in, I see opportunity on the horizon. I think we can use this crisis that we're in right now to do tremendous good for future generations by getting city government to the size it needs to be, focused on the right mission. And so hang in there and work with us. You've got a talented city council, I believe, a brand new one, and I think an energetic and very talented mayor. And we're going to do this right.
Yeah, well, that's nice. Well, thank you. And I know at the risk of being patronizing, I feel fortunate to be a citizen of Chicago with folks like you there who are young people who are contributing, who are making a career out of public service. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Bob.
So Alderman Reilly has been a great guest, and I want to thank him for being with us today to discuss the important work of his ward and the city of Chicago. I'm Bob Clifford. Thank you for watching the Chicago Bar Association's Justice and Law Weekly. See you next time.
Closed captioning for Justice and Law Weekly is provided in part by the Clifford Law Offices in support of quality public television for the Chicago area.